You are listening to the Dyslexia Mom Life podcast. I'm Nicole Holcomb, former teacher and school counselor turned civil rights attorney and podcast host. It wasn't that long ago that we learned the reason that our daughter was struggling to learn to read in first grade was dyslexia. Fast forward 4 years past many hours of research and collaborating with experts in the field of dyslexia, now I'm sharing the lessons I have learned that took me from being an overwhelmed mom who didn't understand dyslexia to a go-to mom who is helping hundreds of moms each week through education and collaboration. I created the Dyslexia Mom Life podcast to give you simple, actionable, step-by-step strategies and hacks to help you do the same. If you're feeling alone and lost on your parenting dyslexia journey and you're looking to find a mom who gets it, you're in the right place. Let's jump in and get started. Hey there, welcome to the Dyslexia Mom Life podcast, episode 126. Today I have a special guest with me, Stephanie Hill. Stephanie is the marketing director at the Lighthouse Academy for Dyslexia, and the Lighthouse Academy is located in Ocean Springs, Mississippi. So if you ever needed a reason to move to the beach, it could be to find this amazing dyslexia school, Lighthouse Academy for Dyslexia. So in honor of Dyslexia Awareness Month, we are going to be shining the light on dyslexia. And I love that Stephanie is here to share all about things that she's learned along the way and how she became involved with dyslexia. And I hope you enjoy our conversation. I hope that you take something away from it. And, I would say if nothing else, I hope you learn that no matter where you are located and no matter where these amazing dyslexia schools are located, there is always a resource out there for you, whether it's in your community or in someone else's community. The dyslexia community is always so open to having conversations and helping parents and helping you to navigate your journey through dyslexia. So don't ever be shy. You can always jump in our Dyslexia Mom Life podcast community. We have a Facebook community to ask questions or to connect with people. But there are so many people in our communities. And even though Stephanie is in Mississippi, she's still in my community here in Georgia because she's now someone I have connected with. And I hope after our conversation today, you will find that she is someone that you are now connected with. So don't hesitate to reach out to Stephanie or myself if you have any questions about dyslexia. All right, here we go. I hope you enjoy our conversation. Well, I am so excited to have Stephanie Hill with us today. She is coming to talk today, all obviously about dyslexia. And why I am just so excited to have you, Stephanie, is that I cannot wait. I'm so interested to hear about the Lighthouse Academy for Dyslexia. Those that have been listening to the podcast for a while know that I have a heart for schools that are really geared to working with the dyslexic student and really nurturing those strengths and talents and all the things that we'll talk about today. But I just want to say welcome, and it's such an honor to have you on the podcast today.
Thank you so much. I am equally as excited to talk to you, and I love your perspective, listening to your podcast kind of backwards and hearing from mom point of view. And, I do talk to parents often, but still I'm such in the school realm that I sometimes do forget, what are these moms and parents and families wanting to know, and how much are they needing from us as educators? So I've loved hearing your perspective. I think it's been really cool, and you're so knowledgeable. So I think this is just as exciting for me too.
Well, awesome. Well, we are just excited to have you, especially since obviously this month is Dyslexia Awareness Month. And so as much information as we can get out there, as you know, with podcasts, a lot of times people start at the end, like you said, and kind of work your way back. And so I try to, from time to time, put more and more out there about just some of the basics that people may start kind of at the back of the catalog, if you will, I guess, for a better word there, and just kind of work their way back. But I think during Dyslexia Awareness Month, as much information as we can get out there from reputable sources is helpful to families. And so I appreciate you taking time today to talk a little bit about that. So before we talk about the Lighthouse Academy, though, introduce yourself to us and tell us a little bit about you and how you became this amazing dyslexia advocate that
Well, sure. Yeah. So, I have been on this journey, I guess, golly, it's been about 7, 8 years. I've been in education for 12 years and started out as an elementary education major. I went to work for a local private school. Everything was great. I've taught anything from elementary to high school. And in one year, in my class, I had a third grade student, and her parents came to me and said, we found out she's dyslexic. What do you know? What can you do? As a young teacher, there was very little that I had learned about dyslexia, even in undergrad and all my reading courses that I had taken, an endorsement. I didn't get much instruction on dyslexia. So I went to work, I researched, I did what I could. But a month later, they decided, that wasn't quite enough. And they pulled her from my classroom. I was devastated. And I told myself from then on, I was going to learn as much as I could about dyslexia so that wouldn't happen again. And so that's what I did. I ended up finding a master's degree program here in Mississippi, where they allowed me to go through. It took me about 3 years. It's an extra 700 hours of clinical training to become a dyslexia therapist, but went through that. And it just blew up my world. What I knew about reading, what I knew about the science of reading completely changed. And so that sparked my love of dyslexia. I married a dyslexic, didn't find that out until after my training. And I went home and said, honey, you know what? I think I know.
It happens more often than not. Yes,
it does. Poor things, they get diagnosed. But anyway, so going through that, it really just changed everything. There was a local school here where I live who was hiring for dyslexia therapists. And I loved the school I was currently working in, but had to move forward and thought, you know what, I can help more kids in this realm. So fast forward, the school that I'm at now came from that school that we started. And it's been about 3 or 4 years in this journey of Lighthouse Academy, but has been the most rewarding part of my job that I think I've ever done. And just meeting the families, meeting the students, learning how smart these kiddos really are. It's just changed everything for me as an educator. So I love it, and diving into, what else is out there and how I can help them better and what we can do is my jam. So that's me. That's where I'm coming from.
And your story, parts of your story are so similar to lots of people, including our own, because my husband and I both have education degrees, but at the end of the day, there's just still in the university system and even in the public school system, there's just not a lot of understanding about what dyslexia actually is. And I will say, and if you've listened to any of my podcasts, I've proclaimed this several times, which is I'm just as guilty as anybody else. I started out thinking the backwards letters, the backwards numbers, and that's what happened for our daughter at the beginning. And so we thought, oh, well, that must be what it is. Oh, no, that's developmental, which, we can have that argument a different day. But anyway, a debate about that. But at the end of the day, though, when I was looking and listening to things, it's interesting now, and you're probably in the same perspective, Stephanie, of what you thought you knew and where reality was and what you've learned. And I say that to say that it's hard to know what you don't know, right, as an educator. Right. And then so many educator friends that I have say, once, like you kind of said, once you kind of tip your toe in the water, it's like, I got to have more of that because it works and it's amazing. And, and I also love that you said the piece about the training, because I was recently talking to a mom friend of mine, and she's like, well, why can't I just need somebody trained? And I said, well, you can go back to your public school. The problem is it takes years to train a teacher that really knows what they're doing and really understands dyslexia and can identify the gaps and figure out that individualized instruction. Like it's almost an art, right, to the science of the practice piece of that. That's right. Have you found that to be true?
We have found that to be true. Me personally, I thought I was a pretty good reader. I think even a reading teacher at first. But once you really figure out there's a systematic way of going about this, and not only that, the students need, 500 or more repetitions compared to traditional students. So once you understand that piece, then you're like, okay, here's what's been missing. And they can't necessarily provide that in a public school all the time. Right. And and like you said, like even people who you think, well, we'll just train the teacher, that it's hard, and teachers are already strapped. And so when you give them a program, often teachers are like, one more thing we have to do. Right. And it's just lack of understanding.
Right.
Once you know better, you can do better. It's
Right.
just getting that piece out. And so,
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, and training is tough. It can take
And it's
time.
ongoing, right? I mean, because I know
It is.
the
Oh
friends I
yeah.
have, especially my friends that have gone through the Orton-Gillingham Academy. I mean, it's
Right.
like a multi-level tiered
It
process
is.
of different levels of training and whatnot. I'm not as familiar with the schools in Mississippi and what the colleges are doing, although I should since I went to
Right.
college in Mississippi, but I'm not
No, it's
currently living in Mississippi.
no,
So
you're fine. I mean,
so
it's
yeah, but
all
I'm glad to. It's
okay.
kind of ironic because we moved from Mississippi to Tennessee to Georgia, and all those moves took us to different educator type positions.
Yeah.
And then my husband and I were laughing. We're like, "Well, here we are in Georgia, and Mississippi has more programming than we have. So what's going on with that?" Or at least it was
Right.
perceived that way in our end as we started looking at.
Maybe.
It seemed like
Right.
they were a little different space. But
Oh
I
yeah.
do think in Atlanta we have lots of school options, although they're all a little pricey, but we do have more like private school options
That's
as it
right.
relates to that. So I mean, it all I guess works out. Something you said that sparked a thought in me, and now I've evidently lost it. But so Stephanie, when you think about, let's say, let's kind of start here. We'll kind of walk through a little bit about the Lighthouse Academy, and you
Sure.
told me a little bit about it there a moment ago, and I appreciate that. But when we think about, you were saying a minute ago, when we think about new parents, and this is Dyslexia Awareness Month, so when we think
Yes.
about parents that suspect dyslexia or just
Mhm.
kind of figure, maybe they've been in the world a minute, when people reach out to you, either through your current job or someone, stops you at church or at the grocery store and says, "What
It
is this dyslexia
happens.
thing?" Right?
Yeah.
How do you, in simple terms, because obviously there are lots of
There's
very
lots of
science.
definitions.
Yeah, that some of the definitions, because I even have them on my website, they can be a little
Right.
overwhelming to a
They can
parent
be.
that's like, I don't, what? So, how
Yep.
do you break it down to explain to parents who say, I think my child is dyslexic? What does that mean?
That's right. So I'm going to borrow something that my colleague says. Her name is Miss Houston, and she always says, and I love it, that when a really smart kid has trouble reading, writing, or spelling, then that's like your telltale sign. So we tell parents all the time. They'll say things like they can recall exactly what I told them last week, or they can say their favorite TV show or favorite video game. They can tell me exactly what happened. And then when we go to read a passage or anything to do with reading, they just hate it.
Yeah, they
And
just
we
shut down
say
on
like,
you.
and
Hmm.
I say, well, don't like to do the things you are not good at?
Right,
I mean,
right.
that's not a fun feeling for a
It's
kid to
not.
constantly feel like there's something wrong with them. They can't figure this out that everybody else in their class can figure out. And so parents who come to us and say, what is dyslexia? We say, you know what? It's a brain difference. Their brains are thinking differently. And your kid, if you know that they have the intelligence to understand things, then there's probably something else going on. And most likely it's dyslexia. We actually say, I think my executive director said it was like 80% of learning disabilities are actually dyslexia when it comes to reading. And so people, like you said, have all these misconceptions about twisting letters or,
Mhm. And it's hard, right, as a parent,
it
because you're
is
like,
hard.
almost, and
Some kids
including
do
us, and
that.
every parent I've talked to is like, I can't put my finger on it. Like they're really like
Yes.
because they do, and that's what I told someone that contacted me recently. I was like, because she went to a school meeting and the school's like, oh, but doing great, right? Like the grades are better, and he's great at math, and I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, your kid's
Yeah.
dyslexic. Like there's still that gap between the level of intelligence you're seeing
That's
of your
right.
child, and then the disconnect of being able
What
to
they're doing, they're
read.
not performing
Yeah, or
whatever they're
they're like in this situation, the child's reading very what I call robotic,
yeah.
really choppy.
Yes.
And this is a third
The
grader and
yeah,
blowing
the
past,
explanation is not there. Yeah.
punctuation and no inflection
Yeah.
and no reading fluency. And I'm like, yeah, that's a sign there in third grade.
Yeah. And if your kid can't read by third grade, there's your sign. And I think like a lot of parents, and it's not a fault of their own. I mean, the schools will say the same thing. Let's just wait and see what happens, or
Right.
they're immature, or, and we have found that not to be true. And the longer, of course, we know that studies are out there, the longer you wait, the harder it is to remediate
Right.
So if you suspect something, if you suspect, I just can't, there's something going on, I can't quite, like you said, put your finger on it.
Right.
Please, that's the time to reach out to someone who is knowledgeable about dyslexia. And it,
Absolutely.
sometimes those people are harder to find. But if you dig around a little bit, of course, where we are, that's our whole goal, right? Is trying to get the word out. Not just about the school, but dyslexia awareness as a whole. What is it?
Yeah.
All the misconceptions out there can be overwhelming.
It can be. And I think one of the really good things that came out of COVID is people got more comfortable with connecting. Like we're on Zoom. Nobody can see us right now because we're on audio, but we're able to connect away, which obviously I was using Zoom before COVID, but for lots of families, I say that to say that, if in your community you can't find someone, it doesn't mean they can't reach out to someone like you. You don't mind if someone from Georgia or Texas or Florida calls and says, "Hey, we're stuck."
That's
and I have found that one of the amazing things about the dyslexia community is everybody has a service heart. Everybody wants to serve. I can't think of one person that I've ever reached out to that's like, yeah, good luck with that.
Right.
I mean, everybody has been so supportive, even if you end up not going to their program or going to their school or whatever it is, people want to sincerely help people. So I say that to encourage people that are listening today. If you connect with a podcast guest or if you connect with, someone says, "Hey, have you checked this school out?" and whatever, and you're like, "That's too far from my home." It doesn't mean they don't have resources though that might can help you and help you brainstorm things. So don't ever be scared to reach out and ask questions because, that's why we're all here is to help people, like you said, better understanding and awareness. And the more that our families can understand, then, they can also become their own, spokesperson in their own community to help other families. So that's so helpful too. All right. So the Lighthouse Academy, for those that are not familiar, where are you located?
Yes. So we are located on the beautiful Mississippi Gulf Coast in Ocean Springs, Mississippi. It's a small community for where we are in Mississippi, but it is wonderful. And it's such a family-friendly area. A lot of really cool shops and festivals happen down here where we live. And I always kind of laugh because if you're going to pick a dyslexia school in Mississippi, I'm like, why would you not want to come here? This place is pretty.
Yeah.
So
my husband would be packed up and ready to go in the car. He loves the beach, so he would be
right. That's exactly right. So,
and do you consider your school to be an immersion school, or kind of how would you explain to someone what type of school it is? It's not a typical private school because all your kiddos are dyslexic, right?
That's exactly right. So, all the kids have to have a diagnosis of dyslexia, and that's because we are a full immersion school. So, a lot of the questions we get about the school is, well, do you teach math? Do you teach science? And the answer is yes. We teach all subjects. We are state accredited. It's technically called a special purpose school. That's how Mississippi defines it. Okay. There's only 3, potentially close to 4 now in the state. So it's really cool what the state's been able to do and provide for us as far as accreditation goes and what we can provide as far as scholarships as well. So we are super blessed to be where we are and very blessed to be able to create an affordable solution for parents who are looking for full immersion.
Awesome. And what grades do you currently serve?
So right now we serve 2nd through 6th. It changes. So based on need and based on who applies, that's kind of decides what grades we'll have. Unfortunately, we're bursting out of our current building. We are renting from the city. And so we are in a small wing of an old elementary school and we are maxed out. So we are looking at potential avenues for other places we can grow into.
Right. That's bad news and good
problem
news.
To have.
Right. It's a good problem to have. Definitely.
It is. We want to be able to service the kids.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. What would you say your teacher to student ratio is?
Very low. So we follow the 6-to-1 when it comes to everything that's taught through dyslexia therapy and language instruction. And then no more than 12 is kind of what we try to cap our classrooms at right now. And so even though we have right now 2nd through 6th, we have a lot of part-time teachers that come in. We have, specials teachers who teach PE, art, music, all these things that we have for our kiddos. And that's been really beneficial too.
That's awesome. Yeah. So what would you say is let's say a typical day for a child that would be at school there as far as the reading instruction and kind of, and it may differ by grade level. I don't know, but kind of what is a a typical schedule, I guess, for a
Yeah,
kid to
typical
get to
day
see.
in the life
Yeah,
of Lighthouse Academy.
that's
So
right.
we start our day out with almost 2 full hours of reading, language, instruction. We call the first hour reading lab. So that's where you get your really intensive multisensory direct instruction. And that's in a small group, like I said, and really none of them are quite at that 6. Most of them are more like 4 to 5. And so that's the first hour. The second hour is language that reinforces. We do a lot of building knowledge for background knowledge. We do grammar. We do, anything that has to kind of go writing. That's when we can really dive into that. So the first 2 hours of the day are language instruction. Then, of course, we have math. One thing that our students really love at our school is that we have 2 recesses. We know that kids need to get up and move. We like to give them lots of opportunities for
They need
that.
those mind breaks. Yes,
They
absolutely.
definitely need those. So we have math instruction after that. We have a lunch, and then the afternoons are really cool. So we do a lot of hands-on learning. So whether it's science, social studies, we actually teach Bible as well. And so we kind of create the afternoon in this environment of not as structured, right? It's more fun. That's when they have art. That's when they have music, PE, and all of those things. And so everything that we do, we try to infuse that multisensory aspect into that those dyslexics really, really need. And we really try to focus on their strengths during the afternoon. And so you have some kids, we even have a new robotics program this year, because a lot of our kids really think conceptually, right? And engineering and all of those things like Legos are right up their alley. So we've tried to incorporate as much of that as we possibly can and keep the afternoons not as intensive as the mornings, because they've been working their brains so hard in the morning that their afternoons, they can kind of relax and learn and be in a really cool hands-on environment. So it's a really unique experience, and I wish all students had the opportunity to really get. So,
all right. So let me ask you a follow-up question that I get a good bit. Maybe probably more of a critical end. I hear in some of the groups I'm in, which is, well, I can't send my child to a private school. So let's talk. We're going to talk about 2 different things, but I want to peel one piece back first before we go to the second piece. The first piece is some people, the option they have is private tutoring. We get that, and that's just part of what a family decides is best for them. But if you're working with a family trying to decide, and they have the means to get to your school, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know, y'all may have, I know in Atlanta, we have, some schools that are like magnet schools. So there's waiting lists and all that. So we won't get into all that today. But if a family is seeking admissions with you, let's just kind of start there. And they're trying to figure out the piece of, should we do private school and go this immersion, full immersion, or should we just stay in our school where our kid has friends and then just do private tutoring outside of school? Walk us a little, I have my own thoughts about that, but walk us through, because we know we have a lot of new moms listening. And so walk us through, how you have those conversations and what should be some of the things the family's thinking about. And then we'll dovetail back into the money piece. So let's hold the money piece for a second, because I think you have some good programs that I want to encourage people to look at what's available in their state. But before we get there to the full immersion program school, let's talk a little bit about, how does that differ? How do I make that decision from private tutoring where I can have one-on-one? And how do I, so talk to me, because I'm sure you're having those conversations where you're at. So tell me a little bit about, I'm that mom. How do I figure out what's best for our family? If that makes sense.
Okay. That's a great question. So yes, we have parents who come to us and wonder, is a full immersion school worth it? And the one thing we like to talk with our parents about is, and I know this, and some people, we have different opinions, right? Some people love their current school, and I totally understand that. And I think about it like, okay, if I want to learn a language, if I really want to learn Italian, do I want to use a program here in the States where I learn it through some type of audio recording? Do I want to have a tutor, or do I want to go to Italy and learn it in Italy? And I think about that because in an immersion program, you are, everything you do throughout your school day is with the understanding of dyslexia. You have professionals who understand it and who can, not just when you're learning language or reading or things like that, but also when I'm in science class and we're having to do an essay. Well, I have a dyslexia therapist as my teacher, and they can guide me through that process and what that looks like. And so to me, that comparison is so large, and there's so much that can be done in an immersion school that necessarily can't be done in that private. And I understand people who can't, or maybe don't have the opportunity to go to an immersion school. But for our parents who come to us, and honestly, one thing too about our school is that we don't keep them for K through 12. So right now we're only servicing for a few years. And the idea is that we get them at the most crucial time, the younger, the better. And once we can teach them those skills and teach them the remediation and work through those basics that they need to become a fluent reader, because the goal of our program, the goal of all of dyslexia therapy is becoming a fluent reader, writer, speller. And so once we can get them through those basics to where, they can go back into a regular classroom and they can read on their own. They can read with fluency. They can have those comprehension skills. And so once they get that piece, then we're sending them back into their regular environment, whatever that may look like, whether that's private, public, charter, whatever it is. Right. So we keep them for a time, and then we send them on with the skills that they need. And ideally, we'd be servicing all grades, and maybe one day we will with the we need more staff, we need more people trained, but we'd like to tell our parents, this is such a crucial time in their lives, and you'll never get this stage back. And so if at all possible, this is what we recommend, because we know we've seen it work, right? And we've seen how much students can grow. And that doesn't mean they can't grow in private. They can. But if you can get them to a school like these full immersion schools where everybody there, not just the interventionist, where every single teacher is trained in dyslexia and understands it really, really well, I mean, how much more can they get out of that experience in 3 to 4 years? So that's our philosophy. And, the goal, of course, is getting them to the point where they can use their own skills and they can go off on their own, and be prepared. So we definitely value those conversations with parents. And we want parents to understand that, even if you can't do a full immersion school, even if you can't come to Lighthouse, we're here to help you. And, we've had these conversations with some parents who say it's just not possible. Right. And we say, okay, so after school, we have some groups that we put together, and we say, if you can make this work, we have some teachers here who can help after school. So it's really just, what works for them. And I've seen this do wonders, and it's like, it's worked miracles, in my opinion. I believe that it's just.
Well, I was thinking too, right. I was thinking too, while you were saying that, even just thinking outside the box as parents may be listening, is that, when you start looking around and talking and kind of connecting with different schools, many times, I know here in the Atlanta area, many of ours, but not all of them. Yeah. Our daughter's school did not, but many of the dyslexia immersion schools here offer summer programs, and you don't have to be a student there to go to it. So sometimes, and I've had some friends too that have gone to dyslexia summer camps up north in different places. Now those sometimes are as much as tuition. It just depends on the school. They can be pricey, but they're not all pricey. There's some, I think, in North Carolina and South Carolina, as well as Colorado and places. But anyway, so some families, I have friends that I've met through the podcast where that's what they do. They do the summer, or they do, some other supplemental pieces there. I think the pieces that you had just said that stuck out to me as parents are thinking about it is a good bit of the full immersion dyslexia schools, not all of them, but I would say a majority of the ones I'm familiar with are more of a transition program where you're coming in, your children are learning how to decode, they're learning the skills and the rules that they need to be a successful reader. And the end goal is to get them back to wherever you want them to go next, whether it's homeschool, private school, public school, whatever that looks like for your family. Right. And so I know sometimes when families look at it, they're like, oh, that's a lot of money. And it is, right? But it's also an investment in our children. So I have to make the decision that works best for my family. But at the end of the day, when you think about, okay, so could we do this for 2 years? Could we do this for 1 year? Could we do this for 3 years? And
Right.
so I think when you start thinking about it more of a short term, it becomes a little bit more palatable. And the fact that for our daughter, you know, like you were saying, every child in the building is dyslexic. So they completely let their guard down, so to speak, right? They become more comfortable. They become themselves because they have that piece. The other piece I like about that, where if I were on the fence, what helped us anyway was the fact that our daughter was in first grade. So we were thinking about going into second grade, and we were at the point where we were doing private tutoring, and it just wasn't enough. And they said, well, you're going to need to do 4 or 5 days a week. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So think about her being in school all day long, where she was going to have to be, you know, I guess have some type of accommodations at the private school because they weren't equipped to, although they were doing the best they could, and we loved those teachers. But even with the reading specialist that was an OG readings person, you know, she had been trained through the academy. Not all the teachers had been, right? And so just the thought of having to sit through the school day, and she was already sitting next to friends that read chapter books, and then having to do things after school. For us, it just wasn't the best fit for our family. That model wasn't the best fit. But I have other people that have done that model, and it's worked perfectly. And so, but I guess what I'm saying is a lot of times I think people, this is my perception, and I may, you know, get some emails on this, but at the end of the day, I think though, just because you're looking at a program like yours or like any other program in your state, don't automatically say, oh, it's a private school, we just can't afford that. Like, give it a minute, talk to the school. And then, like you said, we'll talk a little bit in a minute. You know, there are other ways to get to these schools, especially when you think about, okay, as a family, we can make a 2-year commitment. Well, what does that commitment look like? Does that mean, you know, for 2 years, you're not going to take a family vacation? Or does that look like, hey, we're going to go down to 1 car note? Or does that look like maybe look in your state? I know in our state and your state, there's scholarships that the state Department of Education provides that will provide monies for a child to go to a private school that is serving them for dyslexia. But at the end of the day, when people think about, oh, it has a cost associated with it, and yes, in an ideal world, our public schools could provide all services for all children. That is not the world we live in. That's just the reality. There's too many kids. There's too many programs. It's just... And the fact that we have this large learning curve of what dyslexics need. Now, it's getting better, but if you have a need today, you're not going to solve it today. This is a process that it's not necessarily your child's fault or the school's fault. It's just the way public education looks, unfortunately, right now, and probably for a period of time. But at the end of the day, if you look at, hey, I'm going to do this 2-year commitment, and it means that I'm not going to take, you know, maybe you take pretty decent vacations, so you're going to scale back on those vacations and do some mini weekends, or you know, maybe you're going to do some other pieces there. But the State Department of Education, if you have dyslexia schools in your area, call them, ask them, what kind of scholarships do y'all have? Many times you may have scholarships at the state level where if your child's being served through a 504 plan or an IEP, it really depends on your state. Your child may be eligible for some monies for you to take them to a private school. And then many of the private schools in the Atlanta area offer scholarships on financial need basis. And you know, the schools I've been at, we've done lots of fundraising and things like that so that more children have access to the appropriate instruction that they need. So I say all that, Stephanie, to say, I don't want parents to look and go, oh, it's a private school, we just know we can't afford it. And I'll tell people that are listening, the Lighthouse Academy for Dyslexia, I am sure, is amazing and at the same caliber of what we're doing here in Atlanta. But because they're in Mississippi, it's over half less than what I'm paying. So it's I say that to say it's very reasonable. Where the ones in Atlanta, because we live in Atlanta, they're pretty pricey. I mean, they're like a really nice car. So a year. so I just don't want people to foreclose their opportunity when if you'll just talk to the schools, there could possibly be some financial aid. Now, as a parent, most schools expect you to pay something. But, you know, at the end of the day, you know, when I think about, you know, would I rather pay now or pay later? I would rather just pay now and make sure she has what she needs to be successful in her career and as an adult and with her own children, and be able to help her
Yes,
own children. So I
that's
don't know how
right.
you kind of approach that as far as when families do. I know, and you're
Yes.
right. There are just some families that can't make it work. I get that. Like I'm not hating on parents that can't
No,
make that work. That's a
right.
personal decision you have to make. I just want you to be open minded that there are other avenues to make it work. We somehow make it work every year. I'm not sure how we do it, but it happens. And so we do a lot of praying about it, and it just
That's right.
and we do a lot of reallocating what we're doing as
That's
a
right.
family. And but I don't know what your thoughts on that, Stephanie, is. I know there are families that just say they can't do it, and that's fine. But I'm sure y'all are like us, so have lots of conversations with, there
We,
are resources. And I guess that's the
there
point
are.
is, regardless where you are, is look at your resources first and see before you absolutely, just close the door on a school.
That's
Because
right.
a school like yours, that's a full immersion school, it's not only amazing for the remediation, but the self-esteem
Mm,
and the way the children feel about themselves when they leave, especially if they come in that third, fourth, fifth grade year when
mm.
they
When
feel
they're
it.
beaten down. Yeah.
They're beaten down and they
Oh,
feel it.
you can see it all over their faces. And we had some new employees this year even, and we told them, it was a new administrator, and we said, just wait. After the first 9 weeks, some of them, maybe the first semester, after that first initial part of trying, okay, hey, what is this new place? What getting myself into? It's kind of
Right.
scary. After that first initial thing, it's almost like you can actually visibly see them and their faces and how
That
much
weight, that weight just
that
lifts off,
weight,
right?
it
Mm-hmm.
just
It
falls
does.
away. And it's amazing to see. I mean, as an educator, I just, there's nothing better than that. They get to be their real selves, and you can actually teach them because they've put down those walls that they've built
Right.
up. Like you
Well, I
said,
know.
especially
Yeah.
those old ones, when they
Yeah.
get third, fourth, fifth grade, we have some who
Mhm.
come in. And I had one parent who came in and she said, "You don't understand. She cannot read." I said, "Ma'am, it's okay." I was like,
Right. That's why you're here.
that's why she's here. I said,
Mm-hmm.
she's not the only one. I said,
Mm-hmm.
that's how all the kids are,
Right.
and so she was the
And
only
it's
one in
funny
her
because
class
they
before.
embrace, well, I say funny, it's kind of ironic too, because we had a couple of, I think 3 students that came into my daughter's school last year before she transferred out. And it was amazing in 5th grade. It was a small class, so it was, I think, 24 in the whole 5th grade, and then similar to yours, we had 7 in each group in each
Yeah.
homeroom and whatnot. But and I think she had 3 or 4 in her morphology classes. But
Yeah.
what was interesting was, like those students, even though they've only been there a year, they're some of her best friends because
Nice.
the kids just gravitate to each other and they
Yes,
support
they
each
do.
other, and they would never ridicule each other. I mean, yeah, they're
Never.
kids, so they act silly because they're
They
kids,
do.
but they're respectful that everybody learns
That's right.
differently, and that it's just
Right.
it's an interesting atmosphere and environment to look at. So,
Oh, it really is. So it's its
yeah,
own social climate, its own
it
social
is. It's so different.
situation.
And
It's
I
so
just,
different.
hey, yeah, so many teachers I've talked to who've gone to an immersion school and worked were like, I just wish, we could do this at all of our
I
schools.
know. Yeah,
But it's a lot of, I know at our school anyway, it was a lot of daily diagnostics to see,
it
what do we need
is.
to adjust for
That's
tomorrow.
right.
And it's really best taught in a smaller environment because
It is.
you are constantly having to individualize instruction
Yeah.
beyond what that IEP looks like. Like it
Yeah.
is so
We say,
specifically diagnostic every day, right?
that's exactly what I was going to say. We always say be diagnostic and prescriptive. So,
Mm-hmm.
it's sometimes that does look like changing your plan that you had, and once you do those assessments and kind of progress monitoring, and what does that look like, and how much do you need to focus on this aspect of this piece, or are we going to focus on the phoneme part today? Are we going to focus on
Mm-hmm.
this? And so it is a lot of that, and it is overwhelming for teachers at first.
Right. It's a lot to
But
learn.
once it's a lot to learn, and even parents. And one thing that we do at our
Yes.
school that's a little different is we have parent school.
Oh, good.
So
Yeah.
we do once every quarter, we invite the parents in, and we did this via Zoom, of course, during the COVID shutdown. And so we have parents who come in, and we teach them kind of the science of reading. We teach them what we're working on, what skills they need to be working on at home. Because a lot of parents will say, okay, you've sent this homework home, but this looks totally different than what we did in public school. Like,
Right.
explain it to me. So that's something that we really try to do, is really focus on bringing those families in and keeping that conversation going between the teacher and the parent as much as possible. Because that's when you really can see growth. because everybody's on the same team, right? Everybody's working towards the same goal, and the parent is there with them.
Right. It makes a huge, and I talk a lot about that on my podcast too. That it's just, it's, those communications, no matter where your child is in school, if you can build that strong relationship with the teacher, even when they're struggling to figure it out with you, they're going to stay in the trenches with you. And I'm glad you mentioned parenting programs, because like you said, where we're at as well, a lot of our dyslexic immersion schools in the Atlanta area, they do have parenting programs that are open to our community. So I mean, you might not live in Mississippi or Georgia, but I would again encourage people that are listening, if you have a school that is within driving distance of your home, even if you're like, well, it's an hour, it was for us, it was like over an hour away. And so before we moved, but even if it is, call them. They may have like the very first thing we went to is what is dyslexia? What is that? And that's when we really start understanding things. And so ask if they have any programming, especially right now. A lot of people are do programming around Dyslexia Awareness Month, and it might be that you can't go daily, but if it's, they're doing a special parenting program, get a sitter, drive over there, have dinner, go to the program, because the more you know and the more you understand and network and meet people in your area, the more empowered you're going to feel and more in control you're going to feel of the situation. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because I had not thought of that piece as well. And it helps not only for your parents and your school to have community there, but it also helps just with your community at large.
That's exactly right. And there's so many people, even in the community, who still are very uninformed about dyslexia.
Absolutely.
It's
even in our families.
That's right. I mean, we tell, our families all the time that we're working on this both sides, right? We're working on it in the school side, but we're also working on it in the community side and in the state side. We have an executive director who goes to the Capitol, and it's a constant conversation with people about what is dyslexia? How does this work? What can we do? What's out there? And so teaching these parents and they want to know, which is, wonderful. And even teachers. So we have a teacher training program we're trying to start right now. And it's been wonderful, because we have some teachers who are gen ed teachers who just want to understand. They have these kids in their class that they can't reach out to, and they can't quite figure it out.
Yeah, they want to help them. They just don't know how. They don't have the tools. Yeah,
that's right. And we hear, just like you do probably, from a lot of parents who are frustrated with their schools. And we try to tell families, there's nothing, the teacher wants to help. The school wants to help, but they just don't have the resources a lot of times to do these things. And so don't get mad at them, but you can help, inform them. I said, that's hard it's coming from a heart, and I get it.
And sometimes I know we've even recently with some families, sometimes they just don't know either. Like, because what we started out talking about at the very beginning of the episode, which is, these children are so smart. Like that's just part of the characteristics of dyslexia, the way they think outside of the box, they're creative. I mean, the list goes on. And so for an educator to look at the student and be like, well, they're blowing it up over here. Like their brain is amazing. They can't, because that's just not been the culture we were raised in.
No.
And so they're like, well, this is not making sense. And then that's when you get the comments of they're not trying hard enough. Why are they being so lazy? Which we know are not the comments they should be making, but they get frustrated with the child.
They do.
And then the child's frustrated. So it's just kind of, and that's why, like a minute ago, going back and having the conversations, sometimes it's that they don't realize they don't get it because they don't understand it, right? And so the more that we can have resources like yours and my resources to just get more and more information out there, then hopefully we'll see some improvements. But at the end of the day, as a parent, you've got to do what you think is best for your family. And sometimes it's having some really deep thoughts about, what does this look like? How do we want to, go about attacking this? And then we all know that dyslexia doesn't come alone, right? I always say they have dyslexic sisters. And so there's usually ADHD, or there's something else going, dysgraphia. There's always, depression, whatever. There's always something coming along with it. And then you're having to kind of, figure those pieces out too. So there's pieces of this puzzle that takes a minute to.
It does. It does. And you as a parent, you understand. And I keep thinking, one of my kids is bound to have dyslexia. God didn't put me on this journey without that, I'm sure. And so I think about those parents who are struggling right now, trying to decide, like, how do I do this and how do I make this work? And I think what you said is perfect. Like, you make it work. You find ways, and honestly, there are some free programmings out there. And what we're trying to do, and like you said earlier, finances are sometimes a barrier, but
Right.
even we found that people in our local community, it's been amazing to see. I mean, I think back on these past few years of the school, and we had some amazing donors. And we had this one student with a parent who came to us who I thought was really brave. She said, you know what? I can't afford this. Like, this is way out of my price range. This is not something I think I can do, but my child is really struggling. And the fact that she came to us and told us that there was a lady in the community who lived in that same county and said, you know what, I'm going to pay for her tuition. And I know that doesn't happen a lot, but I get choked up thinking about it because it's like, that's like you're providing for a child's future. I mean, beyond what that parent could do. And the fact that that parent came out and reached out to us and said, you know, I don't know how I'm going to make this work, but I'm calling you.
Right.
And,
you just have to sometimes, and it's hard sometimes, right? Because you have to swallow your own pride.
You do.
And you have to work through your own shame and blame. And you have to get to a point where you're going to do what's in the best interest of your child. And so sometimes that you have to get creative, and sometimes it is about networking with people, because, you know, this is the world we live in. And sometimes just letting people know we are very interested and we have a need. You know, maybe you go to a summer program and they really get to know your child, and now they've got a slot open up, or they've gotten some extra. I know one of the schools says sometimes in the summer we get extra scholarship monies. You just never know where an opportunity is going to arise. And I would say again to people that is one of the amazing things about the dyslexia community is I get that not everybody's provided for. I get that because we're all on this really unique journey of in the ideal world, we'd be able to get this in our public school system. And I get that. I live that. Yeah. But at the end of the day, you know, you got to do what's best for your family and your child. And so you got to look at those pieces, and it looks different for everybody. And some days I wonder, am I getting this right or am I getting this wrong? But all I can do every day is try to make the best decision for that day for her, and try to give her, you know, the best, you know, experiences. And if it's, you know, she's, you know, at the beginning we were doing tutoring, and then we were doing other things like ballet and soccer, and just trying to get her involved in things to help with her self-esteem, and have areas where
that she was successful in,
and
even
so
if
she
it's not school.
And even, you know, just finding ways that they can let off steam and just enjoy a different part, because when you can't read, it touches every part of your school day.
That's
think about it, you know. I mean, you know, right? I mean, it literally, especially as they get older. So I'm going to pivot just for a second real quick. I got two more little pieces I want to talk about. I noticed on the website that y'all have a center for diagnostics. So, I mean, I'm assuming that means evaluations.
Yes.
Is that a service that you provide for just prospective students in Mississippi, students in your community? Can you tell me a little bit about, because that's unique. I don't see a lot of schools offering that. And so that's a very unique twist to some things that you offer. So I wanted to see if you don't mind just sharing a little bit about what that looks like.
Sure. So our evaluation center, it really started out of the need in our area. So I don't know how it is where you live in different states, but the schools are not doing a lot of testing for dyslexia. And so we have people coming to us. Not only are we trying to find good candidates for the school, but it's also people in the community who are searching for a diagnosis, what's going on. And so that's where it was birthed from. We have a wonderful speech and language pathologist who turned dyslexia therapist, also now a psychologist, and her daughter is dyslexic. And so she left the public school system where she was a psychometrist and she was doing evaluations, and she came to Lighthouse, and that's how the evaluation center began. And so Miss Kelly Nastasi does testing for all ages, starting in kindergarten, all the way up. I like to say all the way to 99. She actually diagnosed someone with dyslexia who was 75. And this gentleman had questions his whole entire life about why he was the way he was, why he had so much trouble. And he found us, and he got tested. So all that to say is we provide it for anyone in the community. It's open to all ages. No matter if you're in school, not in school, if you are school age for Lighthouse or not, she does evaluations for all. And it's been really wonderful. And she's a one-woman show right now. Hopefully in the future, we'll have some more people on that team that can help her out. And, but no, yeah, she's rocking it. And it's been really, really great. And so, yes, it helps the school because we can find students who are good candidates. But it also gives those people, and even students in higher grades who are just searching for, maybe they need extra time on the ACT. Maybe, they've gone through school and they've known something's wrong, but finally there's somewhere they can get tested. So for us in this area, there's just not a lot of options. And so we were hoping, and that's why this was kind of a thing that kind of came up these past few years, is hoping that we can meet people in all realms, not just the school realm, but also that diagnosis piece that's always missing from gen ed.
Like I said, I just saw that on your website, and like I said, that's unique to dyslexia school, at least in my area. So I thought that was really neat. So I wanted to highlight that.
Yeah.
And then the last thing is, I'm really fascinated. I absolutely, if I didn't have a different already planned out something, I would be there. The Lighting the Coast.
Yes.
Tell me about Lighting the Coast.
Oh my goodness.
So excited. Look, it's my mom's birthday, so I can't make it this year. She's turning 80, so we're doing some special stuff with her.
That is very special.
So I was like, of course it would be on that date, but I would love to. I'm going to put it for next year. I'll get the date early next year. But tell us about Lighting the Coast, because it sounds like an amazing thing to do, and then a great reason to travel to the coast. So tell us about what y'all are doing. Yeah.
I told you earlier, we live in a beautiful place, and right here there's a little beach kind of slab, and so every year, we started this 3 years ago. We wanted a way for the community to be involved in what we're doing. We're trying to find ways to connect people. And our parents are some of the most phenomenal, supportive, just really all in type of people. And so really it started from the parents and the staff kind of working together. And now the PTO actually does it and runs it. So what it is we do a lantern. It's a water lantern festival. What that means is we release lanterns onto the beach, off the beach, into the water. And we do this right now. This year, it's October 28th, which is a little bit late in Dyslexia Awareness Month, but we release those lanterns at sunset. So we invite all of our parents, our families, our community. We always have a great turnout. The mayor came. They're great and so supportive. Our local aldermen show up, our police, our fire. And they come, and we all have this wonderful moment at sunset where the students, not even just students, but you can write a name on the lantern, maybe someone who is affected by dyslexia, someone that currently is working towards their journey through dyslexia. They write their name on that lantern, and then they all release at the same time. And it's so beautiful. We have family games that can be played on the beach. We have some pizza, Coke, water, all this fun stuff. Music, and it's just really a beautiful time to get together and really focus on really the strengths. And we think of it as not as a negative, but as a positive. So when we raise awareness for dyslexia, it's understanding how much potential and the intrinsic value that these children with dyslexia have, and them understanding that, and them going through their lives with challenges, yes, but being aware and having that knowledge and that power to know that, yes, they have dyslexia, but there are so many things that they are wonderful at and great at, and they can weave that in together. And so it's really, really fun. This year it's on a Friday night. So after school, they all show up. We have t-shirts we sell, and really just kind of come together as a staff, as a family, as a school, and a community, and just raise that awareness for dyslexia. It's super, super beautiful.
I love the idea. So I am definitely going to I'm going to make a notation to circle back with you next year, because I want to make sure, like I said, if it wasn't a milestone birthday, I understand. We already got some plans in the mix, but otherwise I would love to do a family trip and come, and because it sounds so, I just think it would be fun to do as a family, and then an opportunity to meet with you guys too. But I would love that. So I will definitely, but if there's anybody in the area or anybody that wants to take a road trip, then definitely check it out on their website and see if that's
you can go to our website, lighthousedyslexia.org, and so it's just really fun, and I've loved getting really cool, to see all the kids, and it's families. They all show up for their
nice
siblings,
community event.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's
So
super fun.
if someone's listening, they will be, because I always have people that reach out to my guests. So just get ready. If
Sure.
someone's wanting to learn more about the Lighthouse Academy, how's the best way to connect and learn more? What is the go-to place you send people to learn more
Yes.
about your school and connect
We
with you or others?
Yeah, we have several modes that you can contact. So for sure, the website is kind of the key. So that's lighthousedyslexia.org. And then we also have a Facebook page for Lighthouse Academy for Dyslexia. You can find us there. You can find us on Instagram. You can even, I mean, once you get to the website, there's so many different avenues you can go to. There's phone number, you can call us. There's a form you can fill out and we'll contact you. I'm personally involved in that, so I definitely would contact you if you reached out to me. My email is on the website as well. And we are very willing to help. Our staff is some of the best in the best. So
I love it. And we'll put all that info in the show notes too. So that way, if somebody's
Yeah.
driving and they can't write it down, they can just click on
Yes,
the
please
link
don't.
when they get to where they're going and connect with you, or if they want to circle back, and do that. So I know that'll be a great resource. And Stephanie, it's been great talking with you today.
Thank you so much.
I'm excited to start collaborating and partnering with the
Yes.
Lighthouse Academy. I think it sounds like y'all are doing some amazing things, and just the dyslexia awareness alone is just amazing. And so it's great to have have you, Stephanie, in the
Yes.
school and our network of resources, because there are some pieces out there that can be overwhelming because there's so much information, but then some information is not great that's out there.
That's
And I
right.
noticed even when you go to their website, if you I think it's under a dyslexia tab there. I think I use the same video. There's a couple YouTube videos on there about dyslexia, but it's
Yeah.
good because it boils it down and makes it kind of simple to understand, or
Yes.
simpler to understand. And so I think that's helpful. And I too, as a mom at the beginning, I mean, even though I had a background in education, I tried to read everything I could. I
Research.
tried to watch research and try to
Yes.
figure this thing out so I could explain it to my daughter and other people in our family and make sense out of things at meetings and things like that. So we're
Yes.
on that journey, that adventure. And so it's always good when you can find resources. And so
That's
I
right.
hope that helps others. But thank you,
No,
Stephanie,
and
so much.
Thank you, Nicole. It's been wonderful to connect with you. And like I said, I'm new to the podcast world, but I'm excited to share your podcast with some of our parents and really let them understand, like, from your perspective, which is really unique and wonderful, this parent perspective of what this journey can look like and how much you can receive this support. And this community, like you said, of dyslexia warriors is what we like to call them.
Yeah, absolutely.
These mama warriors who are really just searching for information, but the community has been wonderful. And like you said, there's nobody who doesn't want to help. So any
Absolutely.
place that's near you, please reach out to them.
Please.
I mean, people are ready to help. This dyslexia family is strong.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Stephanie. It's been a pleasure, and I look forward to more conversations in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening today. I hope you enjoyed this episode with Stephanie. And if you would, this is Dyslexia Awareness Month. And even if you find this episode and we're not in Dyslexia Awareness Month, always know that there is someone that needs to hear this information, someone who is struggling with the very same things that you are either struggling with or have struggled with in the past as it relates to figuring out your parenting path for dyslexia. So if you'll just hit the share button wherever you're listening to this podcast and either share it out in your Facebook, take a screenshot, share it over on Instagram, tag us on that so I can see that you're doing that. But more importantly, 1 in 5 need to hear this information because they are dealing with dyslexia even if they don't know it. If you have a friend that you think might be struggling, hit the share button and send it to them via text or via email. And thank you so much for listening. I so appreciate your continued support and listening to the podcast. And I hope you have a fantastic day. And remember, you got this and you're not alone.